All right, so we're going to start our next unit on the geography and modern history of Africa. There are 55 countries, okay, technically 54, but we'll talk about that a little bit later, in Africa. And I just, it's kind of the forgotten continent. So out of those 55 countries, how many do you know? And again, just asking that question for you to think about it. Maybe you've studied them in school, maybe you've heard of them in the news, maybe you've seen a movie about them, but for the most part, we don't know a lot about Africa. What most of us know a lot about Africa would be based on movies, and all of these are movies about different Africa events or things. Congo in the middle is not based on reality, although it has something to do with the natural resources and animals of Africa. Of course, all the Madagascar movies are animated, yet there's a lot of information about the animals. Lemurs, for example, only found on the island of Madagascar. So some of those are not necessarily true films, but they definitely can help you teach a little bit about Africa. The other films, Black Hawk Down is about events in Somalia with the U.S. involved. Blood Diamond is about the diamond industry and how they did the Africans to, find the diamonds and so forth. Captain Phillips is, of course, about the tanker ship that was attacked by the Somalian pirates. And it was, all about that. And that's fairly recent. And then Hotel Rwanda is about the genocide that went on in Rwanda. We also watched Mandela, A Long Walk to Freedom, before this unit. So that, of course, is based on reality. There's actually another film about Nelson Mandela called Invictus. And it was about Nelson Mandela, once he became president, how could he unite the people? And he did that through sports. And so, Matt Damon was in there as well. So a lot of you, what you know about Africa probably isn't what you've learned in school. It's based on films, and there might be other films that I haven't mentioned, but those are just some of them. All right, in your packet on page 7 and 8, there are worksheets. On page 7, it is a crossword puzzle, and on page 8, there are some multiple choice questions or fill in the blank questions. They're geography, about capitals, mountains, rivers, lakes, oceans, dams, deserts, just things about the geography that are due next Thursday. Please check Canvas for that particular date just in case it does get changed. So make sure you're doing that on your own. All right, out of those 55 countries, I mentioned which ones do you know. Well, the good news is you're not going to have to know all 55 for this particular test. I'm going to go through specific ones that I want you to know, mostly because of maybe events or a lot of times they're things that are related to the United States. So how can we connect ourselves to this continent where we know very little about? All right, so the first one is number 27. So find number 27 on page 3 in your packet and label it as the Central African Republic. It can be abbreviated as CAR, as it sometimes is. I think it's an easy one to know because it's a Central African country. So Central African Republic makes perfect sense for the name of it, and I think that's an easy one for you to know. All right, the next one is number 30, which is right south of CAR. And that is the Democratic Republic of the Congo. You're going to have to write really small or abbreviate the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And it was actually called Zaire until 1997. And at that point, the name got changed. And it was basically, there were 2 wars. And so, this is part of the reason for the name change. Again, from 1971 until 1997, it was named Zaire. And it's along the Congo River. After we label the countries, we're going to label some major physical features like mountains, lakes, rivers, oceans, deserts. And the Congo River flows along the Democratic Republic of the Congo, which makes perfect sense. All right, the pink one, or number 29, which is to the west of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, is the Congo Republic. The Congo Republic. It too is also along the Congo River, so it should be really easy for you to remember these two if you know where that river is located. In 1991, the name was changed to the People's Republic of the Congo. So don't get these mixed up, okay? That it was the Democratic Republic of the Congo is the big one in the middle, number 30, and the Congo Republic is number 29, which is to the west of that. All right, number 19, which is just off the coast there on the western bump of Africa. Number 19 is Cote d'Ivoire. Cote d'Ivoire is French. You know that because of the D and apostrophe, the little triangle or V, upside down V over the O. Those are special characters in French, but it translates to Ivory Coast. And of course it means Ivory Coast because this is where a lot of the ivory was exported out of Africa from the elephant tusks. And so, of course, you might find resources that still list it as the Ivory Coast, but it's officially Cote d'Ivoire. All right, number 5 at the top. This, of course, is one that I think you might know, Egypt. Of course, you know all the things about the pyramids, the hieroglyphics, the ancient Egyptians, but what you might not know are things like there was an Arab Spring less than 10 years ago, which had a big uprising, and they shifted their government. And it was quite dangerous for people to be in the country, and so Americans were told to leave. And we had a former student that was actually teaching English in Egypt, and she was forced to leave and get out of Egypt at that particular time. Started in 2010. And it went on. There was a lot of uprising and chaos in Egypt for a couple of years. All right, the next one, tiny little one, number 51. It's just west of the Congo Republic, and that is the Equatorial Guinea. Equatorial Guinea, I selected this kind of like I selected Central African Republic. I think it's easy to identify because Equatorial Guinea tells you that it's along the equator. So the equator runs right about that position in the African continent. All right, the next one is number 32 on the east side, number 32, and that is Ethiopia. Ethiopia is known for a couple of things. One is all of the long-distance runners. They did really well in the Rio Olympics. In long distance, they did fairly well this past summer in the Tokyo Olympics, so they're well known for their long distance running. Even in the United States, a lot of Ethiopians win the Boston Marathon or other things like that. The other thing is Live Aid. Live Aid was something that happened in the 1980s, and it was awareness of the Ethiopian famine, and famous musicians like Michael Jackson and Lionel Richie and Tina Turner and all, Kenny Rogers, just many different musicians from the 80s came together and sang a song, We Are the World. All right, number 16 on the west coast, number 16. Number 16 is Guinea, and Guinea is a country that its claim to fame is nothing that is necessarily good. Its claim to fame is, hopefully this will pull up, based on a disease, and no, we're not talking about COVID. We are talking about, all right, maybe it's pulling up, Ebola. All right, so it's loading quite slowly, but this was the original location of the 2014 Ebola outbreak, and it spread from Guinea, but Guinea was the location, and Again, this was not necessarily a new disease because it was discovered in the 70s, but the outbreak in 2014 did a lot of damage. So Guinea, you can see this is where the outbreak was declared, okay, in 2014, and then of course it lasted for a couple of years. When you look at a map, you can kind of see the spread, and you can see that it originated here in Guinea and then spread to its neighboring countries as well. And as the spaces get darker and darker throughout the 2 years, you can see that that was significant. All right, number 35 is on the East Coast, south of number 32, which was Ethiopia. So 35 is Kenya, and again, Kenya is also well known for a lot of fast, long-distance runners, and they did very well in the Rio Olympics. They also did very well in the past Tokyo Olympics in the long-distance races. It's also known to be kind of the ideal location if you would ever take an African safari. The Serengeti Plains is in Kenya, and that's about 500 miles of land that's near Lake Victoria, which attracts the large animals for, for viewing, like you would do for an African safari. All right, down in the south, number 47, I colored it purple on our map. Number 47 is Lesotho. Lesotho, there isn't anything necessarily completely important about this country other than I think it's very unique. Lesotho, number 47, is completely surrounded on all sides by another country, number 46. And so it looks like it's an island in the middle of this country, and in essence it is. So it's the only place in the world that has one country as its border on all sides. Like Canada, for example, only borders the United States, but that's only to the south. It's not to the north and the east and the west sides. So that's unique. All right. Next one is 18 on the west coast. 18 is Liberia. Liberia was also affected by the Ebola outbreak in 2014, which you saw in the previous maps that I pulled up. But the other unique thing about Liberia is that Liberia means land of the free, and it was actually settled and claimed by the United States as territory that when slaves were freed, that if they wanted to go back to Africa, they could go back to Liberia. And so this is kind of it wasn't colonized by Europe, which is unlike the rest of Africa. It was really settled more by the United States, and there's a strong connection. The flag is similar colors and designs. Its capital is Monrovia, which is named after President Monroe at the time. So it has a connection to the United States. All right, number 4, the very top big country next to Egypt is Libya. And Libya is kind of a country that also was involved in that Arab Spring in 2010, like I mentioned with Egypt, where there was a lot of upheaval with its leaders. The leader from 1969 until 2011 was Muammar Gaddafi, and he was not necessarily friends or allies with the United States. We had a lot of issues with Muammar Gaddafi, and there was a lot of conflict there with hostages and so forth. And so a civil war broke out. A lot of the people then weren't very happy with Muammar Gaddafi, and he was kind of hunted down. He was hiding out, and when people found out where he was drug into the street and beaten and hit and actually killed, and then his body was just continually drugged through the streets so that everybody could see that this awful leader, this dictator, if you will, was assassinated. So lots of changes with Libya. All right, now the island on the southeast coast of Africa, Madagascar. Just like it sounds, Madagascar, so fairly easy to spell. And of course, It's Africa's largest island. There are several islands that go along with the continent of Africa, but it's definitely its largest.